our belief is that the main benefit we offer is actually a connectivity to get out of your head into your body and meeting people. And, in a world where your longevity problems begin to get solved, it's like you're going to want to be around people. You're going to want the variation, the variety of being able to connect with others and like have a rich human experience.
All right. Welcome, Jon. Welcome to Be Well. Today, as mentioned, we're joined by Jon Stein. He's co-founder of Alchemy Springs, a new kind of urban bathhouse redefining how people reconnect with themselves and with each other. Alchemy Springs blends ancient bathing traditions with modern design, creating communal thermal spas in the heart of major US cities, starting with SF, San Francisco. That's where you're located. Jon also has an exciting background, which spans community building, hospitality, wellness, and now he wants to transform how we gather, reset, and restore. Jon, it's great to have you with us. Maybe one short disclaimer. I saw a LinkedIn post. Apparently, you're not a sauna guy. I hope that's okay.
A plain sauna guy.
The plain sauna guy, exactly. Jon, feel free to, before we talk more about Alchemy Springs, it would be lovely if you could introduce yourself and share a couple of words about your background.
So nice to connect on here, Toby. And I'm Jon, co-founder of Alchemy Springs. And now I'm the plain sauna guy, which happy to talk about that as well. But well, briefly on that, essentially I was on a plane the other day. And, this guy has this AI company that it's called Anything. You could just build mobile apps by typing or speaking to AI. And I was like, how awesome would it be if you could know at Alchemy Springs, my thermal bathhouse, if you could know who's there, like which of your friends are there, is it super packed or can I like get in, right? Kind of like almost like a nightclub, like meter of how many people are there. And then how hot's the sauna? What are the temperatures of the various pools? Because it changes every day with weather and so forth. And so I wanted to make that and tried to make it pretty fast. And I got through about half of it. And it's like, anyway, that's the world we're in. And, but to that point, I come from the world of more of the analog stuff. So while AI is picking up and, we get more and more technologically focused, my background's how do we still maintain connections as people? In the rawest form, and like, people dealing with the elements like we dealt with for thousands of, or millions of years, so forth, right? So that's the idea. And with Alchemy, well, I guess before Alchemy, to give you a sense of my background, I worked as head of community at a company called Summit Series. And then most recently, I was also head of community at a group called Singularity University with a guy named Peter Diamandis, where we hosted an event called Abundance 360 and Abundance Platinum, which is his longevity trip. So I have a sense of, actual community building versus like wellness and fitness. But yeah, I mean, going into my background and how I even came to build Alchemy, I essentially at Summit Series, we were in our 20s and we bought kind of crowdfunded buying a place called Powder Mountain in Utah. And right when we started hosting events there, one of the first things that we like stood up and build was a little spa, like a little, a couple hot tubs, steam room, and then yoga, what we called like our ashram space. And out of all the spaces we were hosting, events, and to be clear, it was like, at that time, certainly like leaders like at the very top of their field from all walks of life, professional athletes, leading scientists, artists, musicians, entrepreneurs. And we were creating environments so that they could essentially make friendships and be able to learn from each other and potentially do business together, make a greater impact. And so out of all the environments we were hosting in, I found the spa environment to be the best for dropping people's guard, getting them out of their heads of, the imposter syndrome, which we all feel at events. Kind of in a steam room, you don't even know who's who. You can't even see people half the time. So you're talking to people's soul and, you're a little bit more comfortable. You're more dropped in. You're more nurtured. And so that environment, I was like, this environment itself is doing the mission of the business. How do I study this? And how do we bring this to more cities across the US? And so met my business partner, Anne. We went on a journey. We visited over 80 different bathhouses across the world. We kind of gathered a little community of bathhouse operators to learn about the business, and, we're underway. That kind of gives you a sense of where I came from and how we ended up building Alchemy. And yeah, it's really exciting.
That's an amazing introduction, Jon. Maybe to follow up on two things before we talk about Alchemy Springs more in detail. I mean, you mentioned it briefly. You worked at Summit Series, also Abundance 360, right with Peter Diamandis. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so your background is quite impressive, right? I mean, you must have learned or experienced a lot during that time, and you've been working in that space for a while, right? In the community building space. How did that shape you? And maybe a second question, one thing I observe with people in the wellness health space is they oftentimes have a great founder market fit, right? And I'm noticing it with you right now. I mean, the way you introduce yourself, oftentimes people have a personal trigger, something that triggers them, hey, I really need to build this, right? Why am I building this? And is there any trigger for you, any personal incident that triggered you to actually build Alchemy Springs?
Wow, that's a great question. Uh, so for one, I guess, yeah, from a professional standpoint, um, with Summit Series, I think our team probably had some of the highest emotionally intelligent people on the planet coming together. That's why, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but just such an amazing team that were all about, again, like how do you create environments and programming and a feeling, it's hard to even describe, where people just want to connect with each other. And that really is an art. And there's a little bit of a science, but it's really an art. And and that's why I don't even know how to describe it. It's all sorts of things, but it's, how do you create those environments where people just want to connect and be friends and drop their guard? And that has become more or less intuitive in many ways to me. But then, when I look at Alchemy and you look at the first sauna we built, it's little things. It's like, we had to figure out the distance between the sauna benches from across from each other such that it still felt safe and you're not on top of each other, but it's awkward if you're not talking. It's awkward if you're not connecting. It's just that right distance. The other thing was initially this sauna here was like boxed. It was a typical like square sauna or rectangular sauna, or that was the idea. But then when you curve the edges, all of a sudden everyone has a line of sight to each other, and you could see each other more, and that creates a moment of like connection and again leads to more conversations and connectivity. So I guess bringing my background into this, yeah, I have a sense of like how do you create environments that ultimately lead to connection. But yeah, I mean, there was a moment where I left the bathhouse and I said, oh, I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And that was a place called Spa 88 near Wall Street in New York. I grew up in New York. And so I have a lot of stories about bathhouses growing up in New York, but this one in particular was amazing because at Spa 88, I think it was a Friday night, you had Wall Street bankers coming out of work, going to use the sauna and bathhouse and Banya environment. And then it's near the Brooklyn Bridge, and you had literally people from the depths of Brooklyn, all walks of life coming and using the same space, dealing with the same elements, no phones, and just being as human as possible, right? And I saw different conversations happening between like this like old Wall Street banker and this like yoga instructor from Brooklyn. And I was like, I don't think these people would ever be in the same room together in any other situation. They certainly wouldn't be without their cell phones. And here they are just finding the humanity between each other. And it was just it was like a beautiful like rite of passage moment that I witnessed. I remember leaving and being like, this needs to be in every freaking city in America, especially now, where we're caught in these different online algorithms of like that they're creating divisiveness. It's like, how do we just come back as humans, get back to the analog, no phones, just like people, dealing with people. And that was like the fire in me after that. I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Would you like to maybe share with us also who is with you on that journey? I know you're not alone building Alchemy Springs. Who's your co-founder? Who are you building it with? And how did you guys meet? When did you guys decide, hey, let's build it? And then right afterwards, I'll ask you more about Alchemy Springs so our audience knows what you guys are actually offering.
Yeah, that's great. So my business partner is named Ann Kennedy. She's amazing. She's had a number of roles at different agencies working on like doing a ton of innovation. So like she's done like beers for Budweiser, cars for Honda. She helps Starbucks expand into different neighborhoods. She's done a ton of work on the innovation side, and then she really understands human-centric design and how to build cultures in companies that culture leads into a better brand. And so she was head of people at PayPal, and also or head of culture at PayPal, and or something similar to that. And then same thing at a company called Fastly, another publicly traded company. She's amazing, and she really gets And it's like she really walks the walk on culture. We try and have a culture at Alchemy that's very loving, that's, that feels really safe, right? That feels really, you could be yourself. Like that's what all of our team says. It's like everyone feels very authentic in the way that they express themselves at work, which is the ultimate. So anyway, she's awesome. We also are working with a guy named Oli Lundberg and Lundberg Design, which, they've done some iconic homes for people in the Bay Area, but also certain restaurants here that have just won a ton of awards. So yeah, lucky to be working with them. I don't know. The list goes on in our team, but it just it's like the Avengers. It's just all sorts of amazing people coming together to create for this mission of, again, how do you connect people to, themselves, their friends, and in a greater sense of community through the lens of faithing. Yeah. Anyway, well, all right, what was the second part of the question? Now it's on the team.
I mean, I will ask you now anyways, maybe it's a good transition now to learn more about Alchemy Springs. The second part of the question was more, hey, how did you guys meet? When did you decide to, found Alchemy Springs? And maybe bring us then along how a guest experience looks like now if you're visiting Alchemy Springs. I know that that the full experience is only going to be alive early next year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Maybe bring us along. What does the guest experience look like currently? And feel free to share more about the benefits of doing saunas and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, love it. So on the guest experience, it's kind of cool. We found this amazing 14,000 square foot brick and timber building in the center of San Francisco, found it a few years ago. It was just like it's actually a party supply store / warehouse. And right away, we just started converting it into into like a open format wellness space where we can host yoga, meditation, breath work, sound baths, immersive art, all the ways that we could just start hosting people, meeting and building community and learning about, what we were going to do. And so it's actually a nod to the tech world where, a lot of people, most businesses will just be like, okay, we're going to open up on this date and we'll have everything. And here's our grand reveal and, start welcoming guests, and of course there's like soft opens and so forth. But generally it's like, here's what Alchemy is, right? And we could have done that, but instead we opened up in phases and built with community. So while we were hosting those wellness events, we took our like architectural deck and we put up posters of it throughout the space. And we would take our customers on a journey, like literally we're taking them on a journey, showing them what we're going to build and asking for feedback. We end up changing, many parts of the business. We had a cold room at one point and then we're like, no, let's do a steam room instead. And we'll do the sauna bigger, just like little things throughout the time. So now our community has built it with us. So that's one thing that's really cool. And then, yeah, today, through that community, we ended up doing a crowdfund and we did a little friends and family round, which then opened up our current operation, which is called Alchemy Sauna Garden. And so, yeah, I think we have this sauna in the background, and we think it might be the largest outdoor or like freestanding sauna in the United States. We have a couple of cold plunges and we have a big yoga, we still have the yoga fitness studio that people love to use. And sometimes we'll do like non-alcoholic elixir pop-up nights where you can then, have a healthy elixir, hang with friends. Maybe you do some sort of sound bath or yoga, and then you come down and you're able to use the sauna and, cold plunges. And we have like a fire pit and a bunch of like heated seats. So it's just like a good, what they call a third space within San Francisco today. The funny part though is that to get into the space or to get outside, which is where the sauna garden is, you have to walk through this like little portal that is, surrounded by our construction zone where we're building, we're expanding to 3 times the size in the building. So, in the future, we'll have 2 in-ground pools, 1 large communal cold plunge, and 1 hot tub. We're building an infrared greenhouse, which I haven't seen before, where we'll actually grow our own herbs and teas that we'll use in the steam room, in the sauna, and who knows where else. And it'll just like feel amazing in there after you do the cold plunge, and you'll breathe the fresh air of the plants and it'll smell great. And then we'll do its own soundscape. So that's another thing I'm really excited about. We're doing a couple more saunas inside, one steam room and then 1 high heat silent sauna. And we're doing a tea lounge and treatment rooms and a beautiful hang space and studios. So anyway, I'll pause there, but I hope that gives a sense of what it's like. So, and as compared, I guess, to answer your question, like what's the experience like and the benefits of sauna and all there, by the way, there's a ton of benefits to sauna, everything from, reducing dementia risk to heart health to, to cardiovascular health, all of this, right? Same thing with cold plunge. We're not a typical fitness, wellness, recovery place. Our belief is that the main benefit we offer is actually a connectivity to get out of your head into your body and meeting people. And in a world where your longevity problems begin to get solved, it's like you're going to want to be around people. You're going to want the variation, the variety of being able to connect with others and like have a rich, again, human experience.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to live forever, but like, the ultimate solve is how do you live a happy life, right? And how do you have a sense of community, which those things seem to go hand in hand. And so that's where, that's the benefits that we try and solve for.
Exactly. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, there's tons of places to do some sort of spa or have some sort of spa experience, right? But
Totally.
ultimately, I assume what is the, let's say, uniqueness of Alchemy Springs must be the community element, right? I think you also coined the term of fourth space. Maybe explain what that means,
By the way,
and feel free to share a bit more about that community element, why that differentiates you in comparison maybe to other places where people could go to a sauna, right? I mean, maybe share a bit more so people can understand why that matters.
I'm gonna start by dispelling a couple buzzwords that I don't want to take credit for. First buzzword, community. What it used to be called an audience, or like who you marketed to, is now become community. It's in many ways, the way I want to step back and define it for us is, we're creating environments that create friends, generally amongst adults, such that they're able to become friends just outside of our space as well. So yes, of course, they hope they come back and see each other often, but they actually are friends outside of the space, and maybe they met there and through that shared experience. And yeah, we received a number of letters from people who tell us these stories of just meeting a friend or meeting a business partner or feeling that Alchemy helped make them feel more connected to community and less lonely. And we've had a book club actually start at Alchemy with like one of the first weeks we were open, we had an NFL, all pro player champion, and with like a kirtan musician, with like a mathematician. All these people were in the sauna at the same time. Someone brought in the Rick Rubin book, and they're like, "Oh, that's an interesting." They sort of had a conversation about it. They left that day and started a book club. They don't even meet at Alchemy. They do their thing. Like this is actually creating friends, actually creating community. So I just want to say, like, that's how we think about it. And then the fourth place thing, I did not come up fourth place. I heard it from my friend Patricia Mao, who is a genius when it comes to all this stuff. But the idea of the fourth place is, you have the first place of like home, second place work, third place, which I think Starbucks, was a big leader in claiming, which is like a place that's not home or work, but then you spend time there. But then, in 2025, place like Starbucks, a lot of people are still on their phones or doing work there. So then it's really not the third place. And the third place, or this idea of the fourth place, is a place you can potentially get away from the phone, get away from work, get away from even some of your identity, and find a new level of meaning through that space. And of course, yes, it's very, some people would compare that to, churches and temples and so forth. But this is also non-religious, right? So it's like, where's the place that's solving for all of that? And again, in 2025, it's like people are drinking less generally, and they're looking for a new level of depth and connection as an antithesis to the technology boom. So this is the idea of the fourth place, is a place you can do, you can connect again out in an analog environment, go into a level of depth that might not happen at a coffee shop, let's say.
We already had a call previously, and I also interviewed someone in Zurich. They're building, they call it Europe's active recovery club. So also doing saunas, cold plunges, all these kind of things. They're called Keen. I have to maybe get in touch with Frankie. She's amazing. And one thing she told me in the interview, I mean, they were very excited about all that space. And they said they wanted to essentially create somewhat like a gym, but for mental health. Because she says, obviously, that has a huge impact on all these things. They really improve your mental health. People are lonely, people are anxious, right? And so that feels very, very, like you're really addressing a real problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I like, but I've thought a lot about the gym for mental health stuff, because when you're when you like a great example of that is the cold plunge, right? Like I don't think people love going, like no one wants to just wake up and start their day and go into the cold plunge, right? But how do you deal with, and this comes from Tony Robbins, how do you get out of your head such that you don't use your head to make that decision? You don't use your analytical mind to make that decision. You just do it, right? And so that's an example of, yeah, again, mental gym, where you overcome yourself, or you overcome your mind to then make decisions and start strong in your day, or wherever you are. So same thing with the sauna. It's like, can you breathe through the sensations of your heart racing when it's super hot in there, and can you be with that mindfulness moment? And again, and back to the cold plunge, when you're in the cold plunge, you want to tense up, again, heart is, your body might feel, it might have some pain in there, right? How do you use mindfulness in that moment to say to yourself, I'm safe, even though it feels like I'm gonna get, hyperthermia or something, right? By the way, big disclaimer, you don't want to spend too much time in that cold plunge. 30 seconds to 2 minutes is plenty at the right temperature. And same thing for the sauna. They say sauna, you only need to like 15 minutes at a time. So anyway.
That's amazing, John. I mean, definitely talking to you and Frankie makes my FOMO increase a lot. And I think I told you I was in LA, and that was sort of part of my routine. Now I'm back in a small Swiss town, and I'm missing it. I tell you that. But soon we'll get there. Soon. That must be, looking with a bright mindset to the future. Let's put it this way, John. I mean, you are operating in the broader, let's say, health wellness space. I'm talking to a lot of founders in that space, and there's tons of terms flying around there, right? I mean, you have the longevity space, health and wellness, preventative health. What term do you like to use for Alchemy Springs to convey to, let's say, the community, to people around you, what you actually do to really make sure that you also track maybe even the right people, right? What's the right term for you guys, and what do you think about, let's say, that confusion around not having one single term for
I
that?
think, it's just part of, it's just part of what goes on in industries, right? We need these terms to, contextualize things. We call ourselves a thermal bathhouse and social wellness club. I'm sure that'll be, that'll be changed over time too, I'd imagine. But it's really, we wanted to call it something that wasn't just like contrast studio recovery, fitness recovery place, and shouldn't feel like that. It really should, the idea is actually taken out of, it's funny how these concepts are emerging in Europe and so forth. We're like, we got this from you guys. I don't know why there's like contrast places in Europe. You guys have all the top thermal spas and bathhouses potentially in the world, right? So Europe and Asia. So our idea with Alchemy is really around how do you create a space that you could just drop in and spend time there, right? We're not like some quick sauna cold plunge place, get out, do your thing. There are other places for that. I think there's a nice opportunity there, but we're like, hey, let's slow down, get rid of your phone. We don't time people, drop in and truly get out of your day-to-day mindset, get out of that work, whatever's going on in work or life or whatever, be present with yourself, your body, meet some people, have an interesting conversation that may lead to a flow state that leads you way better than when you started. And yes, of course, there's concentric circles of, yes, there are long-term benefits here that work in longevity. There's a big realm of biohacking. We see biohackers all the time come to Alchemy. And then there's just people who are deep in their careers, and they want to, they're dealing with a lot of stress, and they want to relax and get away from that. And collectively, I think people want to be healthier, and they want alternatives to, what was going out at the bar. They want another way to spend that time in their week. So that's where we come in.
Yeah, I'm asking a lot of health and wellness founders that question. And one thing I figured out for myself, maybe I share that on record, that's okay, I don't have a particular health and wellness incident. I see a lot of founders having this personal trigger and founder market fit, amazing. That really shows me, okay, they're really into that, and that they're really passionate about what they're doing, right? Passion is a word that everyone uses, but you have a detector for it, right? If people really mean it. And ultimately, what really excites me is, at the end of the day, you want to create businesses, or you want to build something that actually also enhances or improves the human experience, right? That's ultimately what it's all about, right? You want to have better food, you want to have better gatherings where you can connect, And it's Alchemy Springs, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. It doesn't need to be just like a biohacker, right? You just need to make sure that maybe simple lifestyle changes are possible, and entrepreneurs can contribute to that, right? That's my impression. And that's amazing.
Totally, totally. I think I saw Andy Galpin speak recently. I don't know if you know this guy, but pretty impressive dude. And he was talking about how, there's 1,000 solutions, supplements and all these things in the wellness world, right? And, everyone's trying to sell you these things, but it's actually kind of simple. Like, can you get your sleep right? And can you get your environment right? Such that you don't need those things, right? You don't even need those things. So, it's not exactly perfect, but the idea being like, if your environment's right, it goes a really long way. So I think environment can totally be is where you spend your time, where you spend your leisure times. Anyway.
That's a good transition to my next question, because I did some research, as you can see on your website. And one thing you said is you want to transform, or you don't want to just transform individuals, but the fabric of our cities. What do you mean with that? And that is the environment aspect in a way, right? I mean, maybe make it more accessible for people to create that sort of environment, or maybe share with us what were you thinking about that
Yeah, yeah.
statement there?
So a few things. One is that, yeah. So for one, we're not a private members club. We want it to feel inclusive, and we want it, to get as many people involved again throughout the city as possible, and the future cities that we go into. This could be totally like just something that I want personally, and that we turned into our marketing. I don't think so, but I feel like when there's a place like Alchemy in cities, I know that I can go to there. Again, I can reset my body and I can meet interesting people every time. Whereas, I just don't know. And ideally it's consistent, right? Ideally, like you could go into my dream is that you could go into any city, and maybe you're traveling or maybe you live there. And on your way, let's say you're traveling, on your way out, you say, or even better yet, on your way into that city, your first thing, instead of like going to the cafe or going to the bar that night, you go to an Alchemy Springs, and this is your unlock to that city, right? This is your way in which you can learn, meet interesting people, meet locals potentially, and learn about, hey, how should I spend my time here? What are the cool spots? What are the great hikes? All that. In which case you kind of, it becomes your portal to unlock a city and changes the fabric of that city, both for the locals and for people visiting.
It makes a lot of sense, actually. It makes a lot of sense. Totally, I can totally understand it. Jon, maybe let's talk quickly about how you guys, or your overall go-to market at Alchemy Springs. You just mentioned that the real pure Alchemy Springs is going to open beginning of next year. Maybe walk us through, how has it been so far? I mean, the sauna garden, right? How
Yeah.
has the feedback been so far from guests? And how do you think about maybe scaling even Alchemy Springs? Do you want to be in let's say every major city in the US? Do you want to go and expand globally eventually? What's the dream? Maybe share a couple of words about the vision for Alchemy Springs in terms of go-to market.
Sure. So on the last piece, our goal is to do 10 locations in the next 10 years. There's also a part of me that, is purely mission driven. That's just like, how do you serve as many bathers as possible every year? And just, if you could keep serving more and more, you'd do it. And then there's another part of me, and that Anne, my business partner, more aligns with, which is, how do you really not go that big, but still expand, but focus on just the depth of experience, such that it's really bespoke, really local, and ultimately feels like the most cherished place that people go to in their city. And that's tough to scale. And community at that level is also tough to scale. So we'll find that balance. But for now, we're looking at mainly the West Coast and doing about 10 locations. And that's all a privilege. All this is a privilege, but for now, let's get the first one fully open. And then to your other question, in terms of our go-to-market, we've done something very interesting, which was, and I kind of talked about it earlier, we just started hosting events. We started hosting events, right? Like, to meet people. And then over time, other communities just started hosting events at our place, where that is a big portion of our go-to-market is, we have this big, beautiful, open air space that people can use. Why don't we have other communities come and use the space and bring their community in? And so it's become a platform and a gathering place. I call it like the great decompression spot in San Francisco. When we had, when you have interesting conferences going on, which there are a lot right now, it's kind of like at the end of that, where do you go and where do you like, do the decompression? So a lot of them are coming to Alchemy. And that's been a huge part of our go to market. The other thing is that, there's a lot of places that call themselves speakeasies, mainly in obviously the drinking, alcohol world. And there's even wellness speakeasies that you might hear about in New York and so forth. But they call themselves speakeasies. Our place is actually like a speakeasy. Like, we don't have much signage. It's hard to even find it. Like, I know people who actually almost went home because they're like, I don't know where it is. And it's somewhat intentional, where we're like, people who know, and people who want to bring get to experience it and bring their friends and have the curiosity to step in and go deeper will find it and they'll share it. And so far that's been true. And again, we're still in this preview phase before we get fully open. Had we done traditional marketing and the PR thing and all of that, I think we would have, our operation, it would have been more like sold out, in all senses. And then B, our operation probably couldn't handle it. Like, we're like, let's keep it simple. Let's focus, let's keep it small and easy and do it all through word of mouth now, before we're fully open. So that's been our go to market, but it's, on the backside of that, it has worked. Like, we only spent, I think last year, we only spent about $1,100 total on ads and for events. That wasn't even for Alchemy directly, and
Absolutely.
ton of word of mouth.
Yeah, a lot more organic. Huh? I mean, could you maybe share with us a bit more about those events and those communities that are, part of you, and maybe also more broadly partnerships, right? I mean, assume that must be very important for you guys. Maybe you're working even with saunas or maybe providers or, let's say, manufacturers of cold plunges. I don't know. What role does partnerships actually also play in your with Alchemy Springs, bringing together people and maybe working with others in a
Totally.
way?
Yeah, totally. So on the partnership side, again, well, we're in San Francisco, so there's a ton of tech companies who want to give wellness benefits to their employees or even to their clients, right? And so, we've had a number of, the usual suspects of tech companies either host events with us or, buy pass packs for people, so forth. And then more in, and another thing that we've done is the run clubs of a place to gather after the run. And like, what's better than, doing a long run and then hopping in the cold plunge and sauna and in a space that you could do with 40 people at once, right? So it's that's been another huge, partnership with different groups like that. And then, yeah, I mean, again, we're lucky to be in this city. We had the NBA All-Star Week last year, or All-Star Game last year. And so we actually hosted the NBA families at Alchemy. It's just like a nice, fun way to hang. It was actually the moms of the players who had a gathering to share more about their foundations and learn from each other. Yeah, it's cool stuff like that. I'm trying to think what other partners. I mean, we host, there's Tech Week in San Francisco last few weeks and Drink Force, and yeah, just a ton of funds or tech companies end up doing buyouts and they love it. So those are our real partners. I mean, yeah, in terms of like, you asked about like equipment and stuff like that. We're custom building almost everything.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, our partners are not necessarily like typical cold plunge companies. It's the old archaic folks who, build the actual, in-ground systems for pools and so forth.
Okay, amazing. Jon, maybe more of some personal questions. I mean, we've already talked before, and obviously I already mentioned your experiences, your rich experiences. And I think the common denominator is here that community. You have had exposure to amazing people, I assume. All kinds of people. I mean, throughout your summit times, and also I think with Abundance 360, you must have had exposure to very interesting people. And especially now, I mean, you're in San Francisco, they're all coming to your place. Were there any people and mentors who have shaped maybe your view even on the world throughout those years? I mean, who has maybe even shaped and influenced you in positive ways?
Yeah, I mean, the list is crazy, right? I've been lucky to meet a lot of my idols, people I've looked up to. And it's just like, yeah, it's so many. But I think, the people who come to mind, honestly, Naval Ravikant, who I've met him briefly. I don't know if
Really?
you Naval.
I know him. He's amazing. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. He's
Yeah,
crazy.
I've probably listened to all of his content, just like how to think and how to approach, how to approach things objectively and how to, you know, build, of course, build wealth, which it's funny. I didn't go after, I haven't done almost anything for, pure money. Like everything for me in my career has been just around like, well, actually, this is a good segue to this, or it's a good way to look at this question. I met a lot of, certainly at Abundance 360, I met a lot of super successful people, people centimillionaires, billionaires, right? And a lot of them, they're bored and they're looking for, they want to go back and like build something, and they want to, be passionate about something, and they want to, make their impact. And they're like, they give out, a lot of them, they're very, I find a lot of philanthropic people, but they don't feel the connectivity to like, the impact they're making. And so I've known that for a while now. And I'm just like, I just want to do things that, that are clearly tangibly create better lives for people in front of my eyes and in front, and maybe not, and maybe be even beyond that, right? Ideally beyond that. And with Alchemy and other things I've worked on, you just see it. You see people, I'm driven a lot by the possibility of what happens when two unlikely people who wouldn't be friends then become friends. It's a real driver for me, more than anything else. And I sometimes will watch, certainly at Alchemy, I'll watch people come in, I'll welcome them in, and I know they're different groups of people. I know they didn't know each other beforehand, and then I'll go down and check on folks and see how things going. And it's amazing how many times at the end of the day, we have a big fire pit, like 12 people can fit our, whatever, maybe more than that, and they all end up in this circle. A lot of people end up in a circle, or we have multiple clusters like that. And then you watch, and then they go upstairs, go to the locker room, and they change, and then they exchange numbers. And this happens. It's like a freaking friend factory at Alchemy. And there's nothing, I'm like, there's no money to place on just seeing the mission and your vision come to life right in front of you.
Yeah.
So I say all that because, I've met a lot of super interesting people, and they still struggle. And super like wealthy, successful people, they still struggle because they don't get to see the impact they're making, and they don't know if they're really making an impact. Whereas, like, if you can keep it close, that energy there's nothing better than that to me.
Interesting. Fascinating. And John, maybe also more question that is closely related to Alchemy Springs, what you're doing. What have you learned even about performance? I mean, whether it be, let's say, physical or even creative performance. I mean, people are coming to your place also to recover, right? And recovery does play a role. I mean, you're in SF, people are working hard. People are, I mean, everywhere, and a lot of places are trying to work hard to accomplish their goals. But if you look at athletes, right, they also take time to reset, to recover. What have you learned about overall performance during that time?
I'll speak to an athlete that I'll speak to something. I don't know. Did you ever listen to Tim Ferriss interview LeBron James and his trainer? You ever listen to
No,
this?
but so much to do now.
This came out in like 2017, I'd say, or 2018. And LeBron and Tim Ferriss was like, LeBron, what's your training methodology? Like, how do you guys think about fitness and all this stuff? And then his trainer, right at the start, I think it was, just stops the interview and goes, well, we focus mainly on what he's doing when he's not in the gym. And that's our secret. And how does he recover? How does he sleep? How does he, again, get the right massages, reset his body, reset his mind, such that when we're on the court or in the practice or in the gym, we're able to succeed even more. And that was a big moment in culture, at least in my mind, where I'm like, this is where everything's heading. This is where everything's heading. And I can't, again, like, I'm not one to speak. There's plenty of science around all this stuff. That's not where I sit. I sit around the refueling your life force and your energy through, again, connectivity to others and connectivity to yourself, right? And there's nothing, and I had an amazing coach who basically taught me, is like, there's a lot of different ways you can make decisions in life. There's a lot of like really logical decisions that will, pretty much go linear, and you'll be successful and it'll be fine. And he goes, and then there's aligned decisions. This is my coach Mark who said this. And aligned decisions essentially are the ones that might be a little bit harder, might be less logical, but when you make them, you feel so powerful because you made the right decision, a high integrity, good decision, that life force is then what propels you to do things exponentially. And I thought it was fascinating. And I think about, there's a lot of stresses in life, right? We all have ups and downs, and we all have, again, ton of stress going on from work and so forth. And it's like, how do you get yourself aligned? And there's obviously decisions, but there's also things you could do for your body. that reset. And I bet it against anything, medicine, this and that. I'm like, there's nothing faster that I've seen that when you're having a tough day, if you go into the sauna for the right amount of time and you go into the cold plunge, there's something that transforms you. And this isn't 20 minutes. You feel totally different. So, and then you're able to do more the next day, and usually you actually sleep better, right, off of that. And then you're able to do more the next day and you feel more empowered. So yeah, again, this is where I get really excited.
I mean, I think there's also a lot to learn from athletes, right? I mean, must be. I mean, that's also something that really inspires me. And imagine if all of us would have more of an athlete mindset in a way, and also setup, right? I mean, they're working also a lot on their mindset. I mean, you probably know a lot better than I do. And I mean, it's fascinating. It's totally fascinating. Not everything's rational. Jon, we're closely coming to an end. Maybe one question or two questions still, but one thing I'd like to ask, what's the major misconception that people maybe have about Alchemy Springs and about what you are doing? Is there something that you encounter oftentimes? I don't know, with your friends, investors, potential investors, or guests, or whoever you talk to? Maybe the guy on the airplane who met you? What's
Yeah.
something that's common?
Misconception. Yeah, a couple things that come to mind. One is that, we have a pretty big space. People think, oh my God, well, how big's your team? This and that. We have a great group of advisors and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's a very small team. It's only like for the longest time, it was literally me and Anne running the space ourselves. It's a 14,000 square foot space. This is not like a tiny little studio. And so, when I thought about starting a bathhouse, right, I thought about, oh, I'm gonna be sitting in a hot tub with friends all the time, hanging out, hopping in the sauna, chilling. I've had many days that it's literally waking up at 5 a.m. and get to Alchemy to start up to get things going, start it up, and things just break. I fixed our cold plunge. I don't know how many times now. I'm like literally like plumber status on like fixing, like that's what the job is, right? Same thing with our sauna, and then also, my background being in community building, so forth. But a lot of my work did happen virtually or on email, right? When you have a physical location, things are just happening live. You can't just send an email being like, oh, someone's complaining. It doesn't happen often. Or, someone's complaining that they want something. You can't just send them an email. It's like, you got to make a decision right now and solve their problem. So that was a misconception, but just like how often, how fast things move when you deal with a physical location, how things break was thing that I didn't really understand. And then last thing is you just meet a ton of people. I already have met a lot of people through my work. That was obviously my job as head of community, but now it's like you have, we're going to see our goal is about 75,000 people, 75,000 visits a year. It's going to be 40,000 people that, I won't be there for all of it, but it's a lot of handshakes, and just it's a little overwhelming. You have this dream, oh, I'm gonna be head of community, this and that, and it's like, okay, are you prepared to shake 40,000 hands? And like, it's a lot. So these are some of the misconceptions it's about Alchemy.
Amazing. Jon, uh, unfortunately, we're coming to an end. Maybe final question. I mean, what's one belief or one lesson you would share with the audience about building a career that suits you, or about building in health and wellness? You could choose, and feel free to share anything else you would like to share about Alchemy Springs or anything that comes up to your mind.
So I'm happy to answer this. This is like some whatever unsolicited advice. I have a mindset in me that's broken. And the mindset is I need to know how things work before I do them. And I need to like do the research. It's like how are we going to fund this thing? I need to like have an answer to this before I actually start like getting into the weeds. And I also have this perfectionist mindset, like you can't reveal things until things are perfect, right? These two mindsets have completely broken for me working on Alchemy. As an entrepreneur, you have to make decisions without all the information all the time. Sometimes on very little information, you have to make good decisions. So that's really hard, and you have to get started before you think you're ready, for sure. And then, you just kind of have to just do things and get things wrong and make decisions and keep moving forward. And it's not going to be perfect. And the beauty of imperfection, back to this building with community thing, is that people want to help you and see you succeed, and you'll get feedback on how to improve, right? And so had we just did, next year, had we just not opened and just did a grand reveal of Alchemy, it would not even be close to as good as it is now, where we have a community, we've received feedback, we've learned along the way. Our community is part of our story of getting open now. And there's a lot of imperfection along the way, but that's beautiful in its own way.
Jon, I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot. And I hope to come by soon to SF. I hope I'll make it and visit Alchemy Springs and you guys there.
Well, can't wait to host you. And you're amazing at asking questions. And this podcast, I could just see this podcast going through the roof because you're so good at it.
That's very kind. Thanks. All the best to you and to Alchemy Springs. Bye.
Likewise.